Hi boys and girls, welcome to Reading Workshop. Today we're going to revisit literary language and learn how storytellers use it to make their stories more interesting. So as writers in Writing Workshop, you guys have become excellent storytellers. Throughout this year in poetry and in our narrative writing units, you've learned lots of storytelling skills like using descriptive details, adding in comparisons, using onomatopoeia, patterns, and more. So today we're going to practice using our storyteller skills as readers, and we're going to focus on literary language. So today I want to teach you that sometimes authors use extra special words, kind of like they are tugging on your shirt sleeve and saying, "Listen here." Readers notice when an author has used extra special words, and they make sure they understand what the author is trying to say or show. So sometimes when we're reading, we just read through a book and we aren't really paying close attention to that literary language. Today we're going to focus on noticing it, thinking about why the author included it, and understanding what it means. So let's get started. For today's lesson, you are going to need a book, a Reading Workshop book, and Post-it notes or a sheet of paper or paper strips to stop and jot in your Reading Workshop book. Let's get started. So before we get started working with our Reading Workshop books, I just want to do a little review of some of the literary language we've learned about. So there's lots of different types of literary language. The first type I want to tell you about is comparisons. So when we are doing a comparison, we're choosing two things that are different and we're saying what's alike about them. So one example I put up here says her eyes were as blue as the ocean. So we're thinking about somebody's eyes, and somebody's eyes are obviously very different than the ocean, but we're thinking about the color of her eyes and we're thinking about something we could compare them to. So if we wanted to give our reader a really clear picture of what this person's eyes might look like, we could say they were blue like the ocean, or you could even say like the sky. Okay, then there's descriptive details, and we see this in most books. So this is using special words to make pictures in the reader's mind. So instead of saying, she was wearing a nice dress, or her dress was fancy, you could say something like, she was splendidly dressed in a sparkling gown. Do you see how when I add those interesting words in and describe what's happening, it kind of creates an image in your mind that you might not get if you just say, her dress was nice. There's also onomatopoeia, and we know a lot about this. We focused on this quite a bit in our poetry writing unit. So onomatopoeia are words that represent sounds. I put an example here for you that says, poof, the magician disappeared. So that word poof is an onomatopoeia word because it's the word making the sound that the action does. So when you think of a magician disappearing, you can hear that sound. Poof. The last one that I listed here is patterns and repetition. This is another one that we focused on quite a bit in our writing workshop. So that's when you repeat a word or phrase over and over. The example I have here says, drip, drop, drip, drop, drip, drop. The rain poured into the river. So the drip drops are repeating here. Sometimes you'll have a phrase that repeats throughout an entire book, or it's just repeating on one page, kind of like my example here. So those are just some of the types of literary language. There are even more than this, right? There's so many different types of literary language, but these are some of the ones that we've spent a lot of time focusing on and that we're going to visit again. Last week in Reading Workshop with Miss Chadwick, you guys used Strega Nona as a mentor text. So I wanted to revisit that text today and use it for my Reading Workshop lesson on literary language. So I'm going to turn to a page in this book that I selected. On this page it says, "Stop," yelled Big Anthony. But the pasta did not stop, and if someone hadn't grabbed poor Big Anthony, the pasta would have covered him up. The pasta had all but filled the little house. Out of the windows and through the doors came the pasta, and the pot kept right on bubbling. So I picked this page because I think that it has a really great example of literary language. What do you think the example of literary language on this page might be? This is where you're going to take out a Post-it note. I'm going to show you what you'll be doing during your independent reading. I have these small Post-its. If you don't have small ones, it's not an issue at all. You can use whatever you've got, and you can even just use a piece of paper if you don't have any Post-its. So, the literary language that I was thinking about was definitely descriptive details. The author of this book could have just said, the pasta did not stop. It was filling up the whole house. But instead, she made it a lot more interesting, right? It says that the pasta would have covered up poor Big Anthony if someone hadn't grabbed him, that it had all but filled the house, and it said that out of the windows and through the doors there came pasta. So I think that this page does a really great job giving us descriptive details. So now that I've noticed the type of literary language and I've written it down, it's important that we think, why did the author use it? Today, there is no expectation for you to write down why you think that the author used it. If you would like to, you can, but you don't have to. Today, what I want you to focus on is thinking, why did they use those descriptive details here? What was her goal? So I'm thinking about it, and I think that the reason that the author included them was to give you a really vivid picture in your mind. Even if I didn't have this picture here, I could picture a house with pasta coming out of the windows. And I might not have had that cool visual in my head if the author had just said there was pasta everywhere. Do you see how these details make it more interesting to read and to enjoy as a storyteller? I have another book here that I'm going to show you a couple more examples using. This is Oh, the Places You'll Go, and it's by Dr. Seuss. Dr. Seuss loves to use literary language in his books to make them fun for his readers. So I'm going to show you one example from this book. It actually starts on this page, so I'm going to read it to you. You can get so confused that you'll start in to race down long wiggled roads at a breaknecking pace and grind on for miles across weirdish wild space, headed, I fear, toward the most useless place, the waiting place. For people, just waiting for a train to go, or a bus to come, or a plane to go, or the mail to come, or the rain to go, or the phone to ring, or the snow to snow. Or waiting around for yes or no, or waiting for their hair to grow. Everyone is just waiting. Waiting for the fish to bite, or waiting for wind to fly a kite, or waiting around for Friday night, or waiting perhaps for their Uncle Jake, or a pot to boil, or a better break, or a string of pearls, or a pair of pants, or a wig with curls, or another chance. Everyone is just waiting. So I want you to think about these two pages. What type of literary language might we notice on these pages? There's actually a couple of different things you might notice. What do you think? You might have said that you noticed repetition. There is a lot of repetition on these two pages, right? There's the word waiting, and there's also the word or that are repeated quite a few times over these two pages. So now that we've noticed this literary device or this literary language, let's think about why the author might have used it. Well, I'm thinking that maybe the author, Dr. Seuss, really wants us to think about all the different things that we wait for. And he's kind of just trying to show that there's so many different things you can wait around for. But as you read on in this book, that can be a little useless. I'm not going to read this whole book to you right now, but I will post it separately as a read aloud. All right, boys and girls, for your lesson today, make sure you have a book. You can use a book that you have at home. You can use Raz-Kids or Epic, and Post-it notes or papers to write down your observations for your stop and jots. So Today, the only thing that you have to put down on that note is what type of literary language you noticed. That's all that you have to write. You don't have to write anything else down today. But make sure that you're thinking, why did my author use this type of literary language? What was the point? Why did they include it? Because in the future lessons, we are going to be asking you to explain what you think. So today, after you finish, upload one example of literary language that you wrote down. So you'll put the name of the literary language on the page that shows it, take a picture of it, and make sure you add it as an attachment before you mark the lesson as done. All right, boys and girls, that's all for today. Have a great time, and we'll see you soon. Bye.